Okay, so it's time to talk about In the Line of Duty 5. So this is Cynthia Khan's third entry into the franchise, having taken over from Michelle Yeoh. So we've got this wonderful new German Blu-ray, and this is, I don't mind saying, this is the best we've ever gotten this film in terms of how it looks, picture and sound quality, first class. So this is the best release of this so far, again straight off the bat, and it's probably the best that we're going to get, I think. Of course, Eureka and 88 Films, respectively, they've each had their own crack at the first four in the Line of Duty films. But time's moved on and it doesn't seem like they're going to go any further with them. So as far as, 5, 6, 7, we've got the Blu-ray from Germany for 7 already. Of course, this has just been released for 5, and then in April we're getting In the Line of Duty 6 on DVD. So far as I know, it's only on DVD. Of course, that could all change, But as far as I'm aware, just DVD for In the Line of Duty 6. But yeah, got a great Blu-ray here. Props to Fortune Star, really, because of course, I think they're responsible for the restoration job. And then of course you've got Cargo Movies who've distributed the Blu-ray. But yeah, this looks brand new. It absolutely does. Picture's great, sound quality's great. So yeah, you've got Region B Blu-ray, runs at 89 minutes, so it's that perfect runtime for these sorts of films, hovering around that 90-minute mark. And audio-wise, you've got the original Cantonese, you've got German, and you've got English. And as far as the subtitles go, you do have the German subtitles, and you definitely, just to clear it up, you definitely do have the English subtitles here as well. Sometimes you never know with these, but this one definitely does have the English subtitles. So yeah, this is the best release we've got of this. Of the In the Line of Duty films, I mean, I know some are more highly regarded than others. Of course, the original, Yes Madam, everybody knows, Cynthia Rothrock and Michelle Yeoh. I really love Royal Warriors with Michelle Yeoh and Hiroyuki Sanada. A lot of people, of course, they love number 4 because you have Cynthia Khan and you have Donnie Yen, of course. I have a lot of love for this one, though. I really do. I mean, it's schlocky. It really, really is. But I don't know. There's something about this one. So, of course, this kind of revolves around a shadowy organisation that deals in, like, military secrets. And basically, Cynthia Khan's character and her cousin, who's played by David Wu, his character's kind of he's in the Navy. And basically they're kind of caught up in this conspiracy. There's like, David Wu's character's kind of a suspect wrongly accused, and he has to clear his name, and they've got to find who, get to the bottom of this whole thing and bring this organisation down. So the organisation itself's headed by a character who's just simply referred to as the General. I wrote some names down here. So Kwon Chung Koo, who plays the General, and also connected to this organisation is the character played by Lo Lei. And then but you've got a real interesting cast of characters here, because you've also got Billy Chow in the mix, who is essentially the General's like right-hand man. And then you've also got Chris Lee, or Kin Sang Lee. Now he, of course, was a member of the Jackie Chan Stuntmen Association. Of course, worked on stuff like Police Story and things. He's great in this because there's a lot of the action in the early going that he's heavily involved with. And then as we get into like the later half, then that's kind of when the stakes are raised, and then Billy Chow comes more into it. So it's kind of like the levels of progression. And then of course we've also got the General Secretary, who When the chips are down and all comes to all, she kind of functions as the final boss in this. So, played by Kim Penn, who's a very accomplished martial artist in her own right, she basically gets the final fight with Cynthia Khan at the end of the movie. And then, of course, you've also got another of the henchmen played by Steve Tartaglia. Now, of course, he's done a lot of stunt work over the years, and he's been involved with various Hong Kong productions. For reference, that's him. Obviously, that shot's kind of taken from that rooftop fight scene that takes place maybe about midway through the movie. Yeah. Also, got to mention as well, Kong Lao, who for the first half of the movie he kind of functions as Cynthia Khan's partner. Um, I really like him. He always has a really cool presence. Of course, he's been in so many things. Like one of those consistently reliable character actors. But yeah, the film I really love. It's schlocky. It is. It really, really is. Of course, we go back and forth between Hong Kong and South Korea. There's a whole chunk that takes place early on in the film in South Korea. We get to see that wonderful like Olympic stadium. Action kicks off there and then spills out from there, and then we kind of go through the streets of. Again, I don't think it's ever established where in South Korea it is, but we go through like one of the big cities. There's a great car chase. There's this, and that's the other thing. This film has a great mix of stuff: gunfights, hand-to-hand stuff, car chases, speedboat chases, of course. But it has some really great sequences. And even like from the get go, we have this whole thing when Cynthia Khan's character's first introduced into the film. You know, there's this whole thing that kicks off in the parking lot, and then just this whole elaborate fight and chase sequence follows on. But there's some real highlights here. That's great, and then just the fight scenes as well. You know, because there you go, Cynthia Khan and Steve Tartaglia, they have a really good go at each other. And the way he's ultimately taken out, it's pretty devastating. Because they're having a real good back and forth, and then eventually he just grabs this sledgehammer that's lying around, and he's taking these mighty big swings at Cynthia Khan. She's obviously evading it as best she can. And then, you know, when you have these little moments, they're so quick, but they just seem so vicious and so brutal. Cynthia Khan basically, in desperation, she grabs this shovel that just happens to be lying around, and she just wails on him. And the way his character's just eviscerated, honestly, he gets just wiped out, and there's the reaction shot after he's been hit and he drops to the floor. And it's devastating. The way, honestly, you know, when you just, it's just, something just takes you out of the movie, it's like, wow, that was pretty vicious. And like, there's little things that happen in this that do kind of catch you off guard a little bit. And anyway, that's one such thing. The way he just gets just eviscerated by this shot to the face with his shovel. Yeah. The stunt work in this, and Cynthia Khan, I really do. I've talked about this before, but I really love her. And the way she handles, you know, she's great in the fights, but also the stunt work that she does. You know, she does a really good job of basically taking over from Michelle Yeoh. I think she does have a similar background in a lot of ways. She started as a dancer, albeit Michelle Yeoh was part of the Royal Ballet, whereas Cynthia Khan in Taiwan was like a more traditional Chinese or Taiwanese dance. And then from there got into martial arts. From what I understand, she was she specialised in Taekwondo. But she's very, very good at you know, for example, her kicks, some of her kicks are absolutely spectacular, and the speed and the agility that she demonstrates, she does a very, very good job. Also David Wu in this, playing her cousin. he's always been such a likable guy. He got such a likable presence to him. A goofiness, yeah, fair enough. That's definitely played up here. But yeah, I mean, his characters are often like undemanding. I mean, like for example, around this time, of course, they were both in Tiger Cage 2, David Wu and Cynthia Khan. And again, just similar thing there, kind of like he's got that goofiness, comedic aspect, like when he's having his bickering back and forth with Donnie Yen. And when you've got the three of them together, Donnie Yen, Rosamund Kwan, and David Wu, they're like the dysfunctional trio. Um, but yeah, David Wu, he fits into these films so well. He's really good in Tiger Cage too. He's really good here. And again, the way he handles the action that he's given to do, he does tremendous job. Um, but yeah, the highlights of the film, of course, obviously when Billy Chow comes into it. Whenever Billy Chow's involved, you know you're going to be in for a treat. And he has some really good fights here when he's paired up against Cynthia Khan and David Wu. They have some really cool exchanges. And again, same thing with Billy Chow, because I think Billy Chow, was he a kickboxer primarily? But again, he's another one. His strikes, his kicks are sublime. Um, he's great. Again, again another one of those consistently reliable. Again, sometimes he's more front and center. He's given a bit more to do, and then other times he might just come in for one or two bits and then he's off. I mean, that's kind of what we've got here. He comes in for a bit here and there, and then he's done. Probably the main heavy is Chris Lee. Because he's there throughout. Like he starts out early on in the film with Steve Tartaglia, and then obviously Steve Tartaglia is taken out of the mix, and then he kind of is paired up with Billy Chow, but he's like the consistent, until he's ultimately taken out. But yeah, Billy Chow gets his chance to shine, of course, in those few fight scenes that he has. But he's always great. Of course, the great fight scene he has in Dragons Forever with Yuan Biao. And then, of course, when I got that Sammo Hung Triple Threat collection from Eureka not too long ago. And of course, when he shows up in Paper Marriage as Joyce Cadenzi's boyfriend, and then initially he's presented in an antagonistic fashion because he's going to have that big match with Samo. And then, of course, at the end of it all, he's ultimately shown to be, oh wait, this is actually a good guy, and he turns out to be very respectful towards Samo. He recognizes how good Samo is. And then when we have the whole set piece later on in the film that takes place in the shopping mall, Billy Chow shows up to even the odds and help out Samo and Maggie Chung. And you think, what a really great guy this guy is. But Billy Chow's always great. I always like to see him in stuff. And then, of course, everybody remembers the great fight he has with Jet Li in Fist of Legend. But yeah, consistently great. He's great here. Again, even though he's not in it a lot, but when he shows up, he gets to do some really cool stuff. But then, and Lo Lei as well, Lo Lei's got a really substantial role in this, because sometimes, obviously he's someone who'd been around for years, been in so many films. A film I got that I really love with him and Shizu from Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires was Lady of the Law. And they're both great in that. But yeah, Lo Lei, again, Hong Kong film legend. We can say that. Very, a very established name. But again, sometimes he would just come in and do a little bit. Like in Dragons Forever, he has maybe a 30-second scene. Him and Dick Wei, where they're going down that hallway. Again, I don't know how that happened. Maybe Lo Lei was just at Golden Harvest one day and they said, have you got a few minutes? Just walk down this hallway with Dick Wei and just exchange this dialogue with him. Straight in and out. But yeah, Lo Lei, his character goes through an interesting arc in this. Someone who starts off as a member of this shadowy organisation working with the general. And then, of course, decides ultimately to ally himself with Cynthia Khan and David Wu. But yeah, then of course, so we spend we have that little bit in South Korea. Then we spend large bulk of the movie in Hong Kong, and then we go back to South Korea for the finale, and it's a real cool finale. This, it kind of comparable to Yes Madam, like the big showdown at the mansion at the end. Like obviously what we get in Yes Madam with Cynthia Rothrock and Michelle Yeoh when they go to confront James Tien and it's because James Tien and then his two heavies, Dick Wei and Fat Chung, I think. Yeah, or Fat Tung. Is it Fat Tung or Fat Chung? It's one or the other, but he's another one like Dick Wei, always great. There's that whole like group of characters again, Fat Chung and Dick Wei, and then you throw Billy Chow into the mix as well. That they pop up all the time. And they're just always great. Always great. So yeah, we have kind of like a Yes Madam-esque showdown. Maybe not to the same level, because obviously, when you had Corey Yuen at the helm, things are always going to be a bit more levelled up. But what we get here is great. We've got the dream team of Cynthia Khan and David Wu going through the various goons. And then, of course, they finally face off against the general himself. Now, obviously, when you've got, Kwan Chung Koo, again, he's someone who's been around a while. He'd been in a lot of these Hong Kong flicks. So, he's not just someone he's not going to be an ineffective fighter, an ineffective villain. That was kind of the thing about James Tien. I love James Tien. I really do. And again, when he was in his younger days, he was awesome, like you say, what he does in The Big Boss and Fist of Fury, And then, of course, what he was shaping up to be doing in Game of Death before it all, James Tien's awesome. But then, obviously, as he got older, he kind of, like, drifted away from, he drifted away from the physical stuff. Like a lot of his villains, he had his like heavies around him, but more often than not, he didn't get like in on the action. Like for example, in Yes Madam, he doesn't really, he doesn't get in. He doesn't have any elaborate fight scene or anything. Same in something like Heart of the Dragon. He just basically is there for Jackie Chan to pummel him. Again, honestly, James Tien, I completely understand, man. As you start to get older, you just wanna be comfortable. But what we get here, I mean, obviously, I don't think it's a fair comparison, because Kwan Chung Koo is certainly a younger man than what James Tien is by the time he did Yes Madam and Heart of the Dragon. So it's not a fair comparison. But he gets a really great fight. Going up against David Wu and Cynthia Khan. It's a really cool sequence. Gets to showcase some of his skills. But of course, ultimately, he's dispatched. So then we come to Kim Pen, who, of course, she's up until this point, she's been largely in the background. She's always been there with the general, but it's, she's always been like there in the background. So this is where she finally steps into the foreground, and then you start to think, okay, so fair enough, the general's been presented as the head of this organisation, but Kim Pen is our final boss of the film. So and this final fight, I really like it. I really do. So let's kind of take the time to talk about it. So you can kind of split it into two parts. So you have the initial, the first part of the fight where Cynthia Khan and David Wu confront her initially. And then it spills into, I don't know whether you want to say it's like a safe room or like the armory, whatever you want to call it. But it's so so she flees. Kim Penn flees. Cynthia Kahn's in hot pursuit. And then we have this whole fight scene in the armory. We'll call it the armory for lack of a better term. There's all different kinds of weapons and things. And there's a lot of, again, a lot of hard hits that happen in this sequence of this stage of the fight. Getting thrown through glass cases, cabinets, that sort of thing. And kind of talking about like these little quick, nasty, vicious moments. There's a part that really jumped out at me when I watched it this morning. Kim Penn just picks up like a broken shard of glass and just smashes Cynthia Kahn in the face with it, and you're like, like these little things where you think, oh, that's just mean more than anything else. But yeah, it's a real hard hitting fight scene. So then, what ends up happening is, as this fight scene progresses, we kind of, again, Cynthia Kahn's gradually gaining the upper hand, but then Kim Penn's able to create like a break in the action, and then she flees down this staircase, taking a samurai sword with her. And wouldn't you know it, there just happens to be another one as well lying around, so, Cynthia Kahn's like, okay, I'm taking one as well. So it kind of, they chase each other. So Cynthia Kahn chases Kim Penn down the stairs into like the basement level, and it leads out onto the water, and there's a speedboat there. So clearly Kim Penn's heading for the speedboat. She wants to just get the hell out of Dodge. Cynthia Kahn catches up with her and says it ain't going to be that easy. So this leads into the final part of the fight, and that's what I want to focus on for a minute here, because they have their initial engagement, and then there's a break, again, another break in the action, and then they both take the time to like recenter themselves. One's on one side, one's on the other, and they take a moment to breathe and just reset themselves, and they take up their respective stances, ready to go again. Now, up until this point, the film had been, like I said, there's a schlockiness to this, and it had been very, it's nuts and bolts stuff in a lot of respects. Obviously, it's perfectly enjoyable. I love it. But then something happens during this moment, and it, again, no word of a lie, it's almost like a totally different director came in. And it feels like something from a completely different movie. Because for a brief moment here, because where they take the respective stances, and we have this great wide shot of them both, each of them on the respective sides of the frame. Kind of not unlike that shot that we get at the end of Kill Bill when you've got Uma Thurman and Lucy Liu battling it out in the garden, in the snow. You got one on one side, one on the other, and they're both taking up the fighting stances. But then, of course, in the background, you've got the water, you've got like various like woodland in the background, and there's snow in the air, and you've got the howl of the wind. So, of course, like any kind of music score goes out of it stops, and you've just got the natural sounds of the scene. You've got the howl of the wind, the spray of the snow, and just the whole vibe of the thing changing. Like what? And it the first time I watched it, it just knocked me for six. I was like, what are we doing? And then there's this gorgeous close-up shot of Cynthia Kahn where she's sword in hand, and you've got her, and then it kind of, the focus adjusts to bring the blade of the sword into focus. And then you've got a close-up shot of Kim Penn, and you're just both getting ready before they go at it again. And just the whole change in atmosphere and the vibe, and you think like they've got really artistic with this, and just completely out of nowhere. It just totally feels out of sorts with the rest of the film. And again, it almost feels like it's just someone just totally different came in and took charge at this point. But then we go into our final exchange, and it's great. And what is interesting when you watch the choreography in this last part of the fight, you kind of see some of Cynthia Khan's dance background coming out. You know, because even though she's wielding a katana, samurai sword, her fighting style with it is very reminiscent of that like classical Chinese swordsman style. You know, which is very elegant, it's very dance-like. But it's just a cool little thing to see. You know, it's beautifully choreographed, and again, Cynthia Khan. You know, her agility it's absolutely first class. And then obviously, ultimately, yeah, she gains the upper hand for the final time, and ultimately disarms Kim Pen. And then, wouldn't you know it, the cavalry arrives to basically take her into custody, and we more or less wrap up from there. Again, sometimes for these films, the end very abruptly, you know, and it's the case here. It was the case as well. Like I always remember the ending to In the Line of Duty 3, because we have that final showdown with obviously Dick Way again, and is it Michiko Nishiwaki? Is it? I think it might be. Um, but again, obviously, you know, they have that, and it takes place in it's like a mechanics shop, warehouse, factory, garage, industrial. You know, a lot of things that you could get very badly hurt with, and a lot of places like if you fall or if you get thrown, there's not going to be a nice landing for you. But then we have like that huge final explosion, and then Cynthia Khan just staggering out alive, and then it just freeze frames on it, and it just the abruptness of that always just gave me so much joy. Incidentally, that alternative title for In the Line of Duty 3, Force of the Dragon, I love that title. I really do. But yeah, we get a similar thing here. Like the action's wrapped up, and then it just ends very abruptly. It's great. I love In the Line of Duty 5. I really, really do. And again, just that final fight scene, that sword fight for me. Again, like we were saying, you know, the highlights throughout the film, the opening action sequence, the fight on the rooftop, the speedboat chase, where you've got Cynthia Khan doing her best to keep up with the action, just running along from ship to ship. And then, of course, the fights with Billy Chow. But this final sword fight between Cynthia Khan and Kim Pen, and again, just the way it just turns into a completely different film for a minute, and I just love it. I love it. I really do, and I'm just so glad that we've got this. But I really do believe this is probably the best release of this one we're going to get. So, obviously, it's on Amazon Germany. I got it. I only got it. Literally, it arrived yesterday. I'd been waiting for it to finally end up, you know, on Amazon UK, and it finally did, and was able to get it, and it arrived again. Amazon Prime working overtime because it arrived in such good time, but yeah, so happy with this. Again, it is a bare bones thing, but the picture and sound on this one's phenomenal. So that wraps this up. Again, if you're a fan of In the Line of Duty 5, again, feel free to share your thoughts, as well as your thoughts on the whole franchise, man. If you've got this, feel free to share your thoughts on it. I'd love to hear them. Or if you're just finding out about this, hey, go have a look, get it, because it's probably, like I say, the best bet, because I think enough time's passed that Eureka 88, I don't know if they're going to release any more of them. So this is In the Line of Duty 5. In April, we're getting In the Line of Duty 6, which is coming out only, I think, on DVD as it stands. And then, of course, In the Line of Duty 7, The Sea Wolves, That was the one that's been around for some time. Been lucky enough to pick that up on Blu-ray as well. That's another good one. It's again probably the best release we're going to get of that one as well. As sad as it's sad, but it's looking like it. But thank you for indulging me. Really appreciate it. I hope you've enjoyed it, and again, please feel free to share your thoughts. And thank you, everyone. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.